And I know we're going to have some heating pressures and gasoline pressures because of that Indiana refinery that serves 25% of 4 states, including Michigan, are served by that refinery for gasoline and the products that are refined by them.
How did that fire start?
I don't know if they know how it starts. They were still investigating it, but it affected the electrical, so they had to shut it down, and they don't even have an estimate for when all of it's going to be restarted.
That's the second major energy plant that's had a fire in just side of a few weeks. And I'm just so suspicious that it's not coincidence.
Curious, isn't it?
Suddenly Russia shuts off, gas, and at the same time we start getting all these fires at our electrical plants. All it would take is China to hack the computer and tell it to do a certain thing. That can cause a fire.
So yeah, I will actually attest to that. So I used to test. I can't talk about the company, but I can tell you that a lot of our electrical infrastructure is basically held together with band-aids and paper clips right now. Our electrical infrastructure is so delicate that when I had to do penetration tests on certain substation systems, that they like these are really small buildings that are just they're so unassuming, way out in the middle of nowhere, but they always sit in the center of those, where all of those giant transformers along the high tension power lines are. Those buildings contain the control and switching systems for the infrastructure of the entire power grid, and they actually control distribution and make what are basically highways for electricity passing back and forth. Those things are so delicate that like I had to have an escort that guided me down through the causeways between the control panels. Like they didn't let me near anything. They like guided me and watched me as I walked through the building to get to where I was going, which was just this network switch that I had to do a test on. And then they walked me right back out. They never let me out of their sight. They didn't. They said, "Don't touch anything. Don't even breathe on any of this stuff. If any of this goes down, like it can cause massive outages." And it did happen while I was testing one time, and they threw an absolute fit. Like they panicked, and it wasn't our fault. It was a station further down the line, but they automatically assumed it was my fault. I'd never been so flustered in my life, thinking that I had just like cut power to like
Why
the
did they think it was
entire
your
city.
fault?
Because
Why did they think?
I'm a hacker, dude. Like
Oh,
I was testing a network control system. They didn't understand what the hell I
they
was
didn't
doing.
understand.
They
Okay,
had no
okay.
idea what I was doing.
I didn't
Um,
even know they knew that you what their purpose was there. They knew your purpose. They just didn't know the specifics.
yeah,
So
they understood
they
my
assumed
purpose
you.
was to test the
Yeah.
network architecture for how they control a lot of these systems from elsewhere, but they needed somebody to physically be on the other side and test whether it was possible to take control of the network switch and then
Right,
use
right.
that to get further upstream. And they had to do this test annually. Nothing ever changes though. And it's been this way for the like I saw those switches. Those switches were more than 15 years old. I know them. I when I know them or when I see them, I know what they are. These are like ancient switches from 10, 15 years ago minimum. And they run off of like these really outdated fiber connections from the 2000s.
And you recall how fragile the system was. I think it was, I don't know, 2003 when we had that cascade of collapses throughout the Northeast in Canada. And I don't know if it was attributed to a tree branch sparked an outage that cascaded. Do you remember that?
I do
Oh,
remember
that was
that.
awesome. I didn't have to go to school for weeks. That was so great.
Yeah, it happened. I thought I blew my stereo out and my speakers because I turned it up too loud, but it turns out it wasn't me. It was power outage. So,
Like,
Yeah,
wasn't like a third of the country was down or something?
yeah, yep.
yeah, I do remember that, and I don't buy for a second that it was because of a tree. Honestly, I think that something much bigger happened, and they just spun a story that people would find believable. But like a tree coming down on some high tension wires, no, it would not. There because they can divert power elsewhere. There's multiple routes. It would be difficult, but it's not impossible. Not enough to take down the entire eastern seaboard. I honestly think that it was I do honestly think that it was a cyber attack.
Yeah,
It may have
scary.
been one of the first ones of its kind. Because 2 years later, the Stuxnet worm was launched against the Iranian control system, at one of their nuclear refining facilities that was refining weapons grade plutonium. So I looked at and I was very young when all of this was going on, but looking back at the history, I'm like, so 2 years after the world's greatest power outage in the United States happens in the United States, 2 years later, a massive worm just wipes out all the nuclear purification centrifuges in an Iranian power plant. Right. And there's like these two things are not at all related to each other. Not that I think that it was a nation state actor. It could have been a bad actor. It could have been another nation state. It could have been a test gone wrong. It could have been so many other things. But I like the idea that a tree took it down and wiped out a third of the eastern seaboard. I don't buy it. But I would buy that somebody with access to some of these systems, even somebody just making a very, very simple mistake of like I don't know, like it could have been a fire. It could have been an electrical fire at one of these substations, and that can cause a cascade of failures down the line, you know? But what you're saying about like these something goes wrong at one of these stations or one of the power plants and things just cascade downstream, that does have the possibility of happening. And that's why these guys, when I was being escorted, were just so adamant that I could not touch anything. Don't go near it at all. You go directly to the switch. You keep your arms in. Like they even like had me cross my arms and just like make sure that I don't like hook my backpack on anything. It was ridiculous. It was more intimidating than like if you were going into a military facility or something, you know.
Stakes. This is
But
a
the
high
thing
stakes
is
war.
yeah, it is high stakes. The whole deal though is like all this stuff is really really fragile, and if it does break, like there's not many people out there that know how to fix it anymore. So if the electrical infrastructure fails that catastrophically, like fixing it would take, geez, it could take months.
Many
And
of
there,
the parts don't exist anymore, I'm sure, too.
Yeah.
and there's no way to practically take it back off internet, like offline, to do make people do the work job manually like they used to, right? It's not practical, or maybe even impossible. I don't know.
What we need is a complete overhaul. Like it has to be brand new, both physically and virtually. And nobody has done it. Nobody has accepted that task. We only just got started, I think, because of Biden's COVID recovery plan included infrastructure for job creation as well as fixing the infrastructure. And that's the first time we've even began to address this.
Yep, and I don't know if there's enough copper. We have shipped so much copper to China in the last like almost 20 years, and I mean massive amounts of it, so much that you could actually see pictures of stacked sheets of copper throughout warehouses just sitting. And this was over 10 years ago, because that's one of their plans. I don't know. We'd have a hard time sourcing a lot of the materials probably right now to do it.
Oh, yeah, we definitely fucked up not doing the infrastructure before China got mad at us again.
No kidding. So that actually kind of brings up the topic of whether we can expect whether we can expect a massive um, cutover in the next 20 years over to green energy and an overhaul of our electrical infrastructure. Because I think that Texas got a pretty they got a pretty rude awakening when they experienced snow for the first time, and I laugh because I grew up in a snow climate, and they got like 2 inches. But I know that like I had a friend that visited me from Texas one time, and he was like, I was taking hairpin turns in a blizzard at like 35, 40 miles an hour, and that's no big deal for me. But the whole time, like, he's having a heart attack actively in the passenger seat, like doing the ghost brake and slapping the door, freaking out the whole time. And he's just like, he's like, slow down. Yeah, what are you doing? We're going to die. He's just panicking the whole time. And they're not familiar with snow at all. And apparently, neither is their infrastructure. So when this blizzard hit the majority of Texas, and they got like 2 or 3 inches of snow. I know I was kind of laughing about it, but at the same time, it's super serious because a bunch of people died not knowing how to drive in it. People lost power, and because the electrical grid failed because they didn't have good insulated wiring, a lot of their electrical infrastructure was not built to handle extreme cold like that. And when I say extreme cold, anything below freezing, just anything below freezing is enough to affect the attenuation of electricity through the wire. So if it's not properly insulated, you can cause shorts and stuff like that. And I'm not surprised that their infrastructure went down, but what I was surprised by is that when faced with the reality of it, they still the legislature and the local government still refused to upgrade their electrical infrastructure. And I'm just like, what the hell is with you? Like, what is the resistance to this? Because now, like, what are you upset that you're being forced to recognize that climate is changing and things are getting a little bit strange, so you might have to prepare for some unusual weather now? Like, I don't even understand what the logic is there, but across the entire country, there's way outdated infrastructure that needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. Things have to be fixed, and we need to be upgrading to the latest technology, but just there's so many localities that are, and the way that we are spread out as a nation, both ideologically and geographically, it's going to take us forever to even catch up to the last 20 years. And then by the time we get there, we're going to be 20 years out of date again. So like I'm wondering like what is the way forward at this point, cuz we have all of these we have entire groups of people that are just resistant to change to the degree that they won't even update wiring.
Why do you think that is? That defies common sense, doesn't
I
it?
don't get it. That's what I'm saying. Like
You have to
somebody explain
accept
it to
other
me.
things, though. Like
Well,
you said, they would
like
have
I'm a
to accept
Texan.
that climate change is real in order to update the wiring for snow.
Yeah, I'm a Texan, and what they tell us is that the electrical grid is good, and we should have confidence in that grid. And what they're giving
Propaganda.
us is the
Propaganda.
best thing that can be given to us. That's exactly what, all those politicians are feeding us. But in reality, we see the opposite, that we're all struggling. Like I put in the chat, we had to move out of our home for 6 days because there was no power, there was no natural gas. So we couldn't even run our fireplace to at least warm the living room at all. So the temperatures were so cold, we had to take our kids and go to my in laws. Luckily, they live close enough to a hospital grid and they didn't lose power, but the majority of homes around us weren't. We're not prepared for that kind of weather because we don't plan for it. So now it's like now we have people soliciting to us natural gas generators so that we can power our homes. Whereas like me, I'm like, well, I want solar panels and I need enough to where if this kind of weather comes, I can still maintain my household and we don't have to leave the house. At least to where I can keep it warm and cook some food.
Yeah, and natural gas is a good way to go as well, but solar I think is like that's really the way forward, and natural gas could be supplemental. Um, but
Unless
there's
you have your
so
own
much.
gas well or something.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Maybe I think differently because my family growing up, we did have our own gas well up until the city cut us off. They
See,
found
we
out
don't
about
have
it.
that. Yeah, so we're kind of, city here, so we don't have those kind of capabilities. If we live further out of the city, yes, you can get yourself like a septic tank and get your own water out of a well, but like gas, you still have to contact the city. So, going that way. Have you guys looked at like the gigafactories and what like Tusk like released in Germany? Like supposedly they're having really big success. I mean, with the situation happening there with the electricity and gas, Tesla has kind of stopped his plan in California, to my understanding, and even like is doing something in Texas, but really is focusing on Germany. And the way Musk is, he likes to take advantage of. He's thinking, you know, months and a year ahead of us. So I think that he's going to momentize the gigafactory and see if he can provide them power. I mean, look what he did to the Ukraine. He gave them all those satellites.
Oh, absolutely. I think he's going to basically take over Germany's electrical production because of what happened with his factory already going there. He's just going to hook them up the way he hooked up Puerto Rico.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that was a brilliant move by him, by the way. I was actually so impressed with his initiative, because that was an excellent opportunity. Like that's free, well, not free, but that was a big advertising thing where he was actually able to demonstrate the power of clean energy and be able to power an entire country. It was a small island, sure, but it was meaningfully impactful. And I think that he could absolutely follow through on the same plan again. This would be another opportunity to do it because you have Russia that's threatening to cut off Nord Stream pipeline every week for maintenance. Which when's the last time that they did maintenance on fucking anything? You know, the Nord Stream pipeline has never gone down until recently, and now it's gone down what 3-4 times? How many times has it gone down now for maintenance? It's like stop
Their
calling it
maintenance
maintenance. Just
crew
call it
sucks.
extortion. Okay, we know what it is. You don't have to lie to anybody. We all know. Putin is so silly.
Their maintenance crew is probably Ukrainian.
Well, they're scared. You know, these guys are all scared because they know what clean energy is. Clean energy removes their power. They will no longer have power if no one's buying gas from them or energy from them. If they rely on solar, if the UK and all of us would 24 gigafactories would power the world, isn't that what Musk said?
I didn't know that.
I had no idea. I
Yeah,
didn't
it's
realize it.
24. Yeah, he actually has a statement. Let me see if I can find it.
I do know that nuclear fusion, though it's 20 years away, will really be the salvation. I hate to say it, but that's kind of like that. The power unleashed by that is going to be unbelievable.
We actually did the calculation. Okay, this is from Futurism. 100 Tesla gigafactories could power the entire world.
Sorry.
But that's still an attainable number. That factory cost
That's not a lot.
How many billions did that factory cost? Just the one.
How
I'm
does
trying to
that
look through
factory
this.
generate power? Does anyone know?
Well,
how it works?
it has solar. It has solar panels on the roof of it, and it's built in a specific climate. Like the one that's there is in the middle of the Mojave. It's in Nevada. So it's like it's sunny. It's like sun beating directly down on it 14 hours a day. That's plenty. That is plenty of electrical generation for at least a locality. It's a huge amount of energy.
Yeah, they're saying it'll initially cost $1 billion and it could go up to $10 billion.
Oh my god.
So I wonder how many of those would power North America.
Based on our electrical consumption, I would probably say that we would most likely take 20 of those. So a road to a sustainable future for the Tesla Gigafactory. Or via
the trick
sustainable Gigafactory.
The trick Tesla needs to solve is having robots in the factory do everything. Once that happens, it'll be revolutionary for him because he would have those things running 24/7 producing all this stuff because all these products are produced within the Gigafactory.
Right.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. And I know that I know that the first thing that people think of as far as like this is so bad, like we'll lose all of our jobs, but I'm like, no, not really, because if you put us in a position where the entirety of the world is where all of the small jobs are automated away, and the only way to maintain society is for everybody to be maintaining all of these extremely high-tech systems, that creates an opportunity because everybody that is needed to power and maintain all of those systems needs to be highly educated. So what's the natural solution to that? Well, you educate everybody. If you have a fully educated workforce, then that creates that paves the road for the social change in order to actually fix these problems. And I think that we've been shooting ourselves in the foot for the last century by not educating people to their fullest capability.